Welcome to Tax Sale Insiders, the latest from Tax Sale Resources, bringing you information about tax sales from experts in the industry. This educational series from TSR was created to assist new investors with the basics of tax sales. In this episode, Brian and Rachel Seidensticker, the founders of Tax Sale Resources, share their knowledge and experience from over 25 years of combined experience in the industry. They share their insights on how to invest, what to look for, and the vital steps in getting started. So sit back and relax for another episode of Tax Sale Insiders, powered by Tax Sale Resources.
For those of you who are watching, I hope you've enjoyed the videos. Brian and Rachel have joined us for several videos. So if you haven't seen those videos, make sure you go back and watch those videos. You'll get all of the basics. We call it Back to the Basics, and we teach you everything about this whole investment opportunity that you take. And by no means are we going to provide you strategies or tell you how to do it. We're just giving you the fundamentals of the market so you understand that this is education you can use to better yourself and to help you make important and smart decisions on your investments. So again, today with Brian and Rachel, we're going to talk about three things specifically. We're going to talk about over-the-counter trading, and what does that mean? Ooh, mysterious. And then we're going to talk about where do you find a list? One of the questions from someone in our group was, where do I find a list, Carl? I don't know where to find properties. So we're going to dive into this information today, and we're going to hope to get you as much information as fast as you can, as fast as we can. So like I said, be ready, turn off all your distractions, grab your pen and paper, and let's get to work. All right. All right, so let's get started. So before we start talking about how do I do OTCs and where do I find a list, there's this huge question that I have about bidding, because I saw different things that I thought were a little bit unethical at auctions. So I kind of want to close out that part with the auction part. So are there laws governing how I bid when I go to an auction?
I'll let Rachel answer, because again, there's two parts, Carl. There's kind of the laws around what you certainly can do, and then there's usually some rules that either the county or city has, and that you have to follow on top of those laws. So anyway, Rach, you're much more versed in the antitrust stuff.
Okay. Essentially, most of the federal governing of the tax sale world, we'll call it, and bidding at those tax sales falls under the Sherman antitrust. And the biggest thing that investors can get busted for is any sort of collusion at tax sales. So if you are caught working with another investor to kind of team up on particular parcels for bid rates, or holding out so another investor can get a property and then he'll hold out or she'll hold out for you to get a property, you can't in any form come across as if you're colluding together in that type of activity. Otherwise, you can get busted. And that's where you'll see a lot of the negative press for investors, and where they get into trouble is they've basically gone to these sales and they're working with other companies or other investors. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but that's the biggest thing. And we've been told flat out from investors that, the FBI will be undercover investors watching. And so, there are recommendations on ensuring that you keep to yourself at the sales, at the auctions themselves, to protect yourself from not coming across as if you're working with other investors. So go ahead.
No, so I was got a question. So let's just hypothetically say I'm in DeKalb County, Georgia, and I'm at a deed auction, right? Redeemable deed auction. And Brian happens to be there. And I don't know Brian, but I meet Brian. I meet Brian there, and he's a good guy. We share a cup of coffee, and we're sitting there talking, and I show him what I'm bidding on. He shows me what he's bidding on. And he,
No, don't.
Bad.
Yeah, bad juju. You know, I mean, yeah, that's just, yeah, don't get caught. That's terrible advice. Just don't do it. I mean, you really run the risk, and we have heard of, especially in Georgia, ironically, where they were cracking down on that specifically. Haven't heard a lot of that as of late. I know there were probably about 3 years in there that the FBI was just boom, boom, well, about 5 years, I guess, about boom, 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 you know, catching investors in acts like that. Also colluding with, obviously, the treasurer. So getting, you know, and you'll hear of that. One big county, they seem to always be getting themselves into trouble because the treasurer's not the cleanest, but they've definitely gotten into trouble where they will set aside, you know, parcels and ensure that certain investors get those parcels and batches and so forth. So it's just, you know, it's not an area you want to mess with, because the federal government comes down really hard on those any violations of this Sherman antitrust. So that's kind of the broad federal scope. I think at the baseline county level, there will be certain rules to follow, whether it's registration and making sure you're all up to speed. Don't be running in and trying to get registered if they required registering beforehand. But each county will have their own, I guess, rules to follow in how they accept bids, the order, you know, obviously that just depends on if you've got a number or how they're doing it. And some of them are going to be disorganized, so be ready. Some of them aren't going to have very many set rules. It's just kind of hairy-carry. We've heard some of those stories as well, where you go in there and it's just, you know, raising their hand and there's not a lot of organization. So always check with your county on the rules that they have for governing their tax sales specifically, because that changes significantly per county.
So it sounds like and it's just very clear for the investors who are new, who haven't delved into this information, who haven't looked at the legal aspect of bidding and what does that all entail. If you're new, or even if you're seasoned and you just haven't looked at the antitrust law, the Sherman Antitrust Act, you need to go look at this information and make sure that you're compliant with it. And that's basically what Rachel and Brian are saying today. If you don't know, you need to go know. And you don't have to go pay for an attorney to break it down in legalese and understand it. Just go read it so you make sure you don't do simple things like sharing what you're going to bid with somebody else and talking about what you're doing and telling a person, well, don't bid on that, and I won't bid on yours, and, you know, or help me bid this up so I can get somebody out the way. Just stay out of that area and go look at the law. That is the most important thing. Otherwise, you can get yourself hurt and you can end up losing your investment to fines. Possibly even jail time. So
we believe in it so much that we make our employees who don't even attend sales, but we make them go through an antitrust training so that they're aware, so that if for some reason they're ever in a position where they're close to a customer of ours, that they understand that they cannot share anything about another investor's criteria, another investor's you know, overall plan. You know, you just cannot, if we happen to find out what an investor is bidding on, we can't share that. I mean, we make our employees go through a training to ensure that they fully understand where.
Awesome.
You know,
and who offers that training, by the way, Rachel?
We do a training through the NTLA, the National Tax Lien Association. They actually have a video that you can do that is conducted by a lawyer who is well-versed in the Sherman antitrust laws. So that's a start, that's a place. But I know there's other lawyers that probably have training out there as well that you could look into. So
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, great. So that answered that question. Be careful, go read the law, get up to speed on what's going on out there so you don't get yourself into a car wreck. Okay, so now let's kind of jump into the next thing. OTC. Before I get to where do I find properties, and I know this is a little bit out of order, but the question is, what is over the counter? What does that actually mean? What is over the counter trading? Brian, what is assignments? How do I buy an assignment and transfers? And what is all this high niche stuff that I hear people talking about?
Well, yeah, like I said, I'll kind of go one step just before we talk about OTC, but what happens to all of those liens that don't sell at the auction? There is an ongoing theory that if it doesn't sell at the auction, it must be crap, and in large part that's true, right? If no one's willing to bid on a lien or a deed or a redeemable deed at the auction, what's wrong with it? Why would they go back to the county? And but there are still, decent liens and properties to invest out there. It just depends on the situation, because the reason something didn't sell could be from a multitude of reasons. It could be legitimately passed on by 20 investors and it may be junk. There also could be a situation, there's always a few parcels that don't show up in research or data when you're trying to look for them, and most people, rightfully so, are avoid those because you don't know anything about them, and they don't show up because they're brand new parcels. A year or two later or a few months later, they might finally get their assessment rolls updated and the data is actually great, right? So those diamonds in the rough, needles in the haystack, whatever you want to call them, do exist. But those liens that don't sell it's called being struck off. They're struck off to the county or whoever the governing authority is. If they don't sell, then in most cases, you can go buy those directly from the county. Or, it kind of depends on the state, but either you can buy it, either they take them, they just roll them over into the next auction, or you can go buy them directly from the county, and that's what we define as over the county. When you're buying them.
Quick question for you, Brian. I don't mean to cut you off. So just kind of digging a little bit into that. And so for our audience, so that they understand, when you say go buy that from the county, does that mean I just go down to the tax commissioner's location or to the county clerk, or where am I going? And do I have to bid on it? Do I have to pay like the property value? What am I doing here? What is that?
Well, you're going to whatever authority hosted the auction, whether that's tax commissioner, clerk, tax collector, treasurer, whatever entity hosted the auction. You're basically going back to them and saying, hey, do you have any liens or deeds that didn't sell at the auction? Are those available over the county, or can I purchase them directly from you? I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. Now the process of doing that typically is called an assignment, and I'll dovetail here into assignments, and because we determined assignments to be any transfer of the lien after the auction, after the primary auction, and that can be done one of two ways, directly with the county, like we just talked about. But the other way you can get an assignment is actually from another investor that attended the auction and bought the lien, and so we call that the secondary market. You're buying them from somebody that attended the auction, the primary market, and you're buying it from them. And that's really what you're doing on over the counter from the county as well, as you're buying that assignment from them. Essentially, the county said, okay, if nobody else wants to buy it, I'll buy it. And then if you want to buy it from them, you can.
One quick addition, though, is it's not just to the county. In some states, it's actually struck to the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I just go in and say, hey, I saw you had these properties. They didn't, maybe I was at the auction or had an auction sheet, and I noticed 4 of the properties, didn't get bidded on, or they just kind of, I heard them say struck back to the state or back to the county, or
usually,
and so I can just contact them and pay them. What am I paying? Am I just paying what the opening bid would be, or am I paying something more? Am I paying a fee, or does it depend on the county?
It varies. Yeah. Sometimes you can buy them for what's considered face value, or the value you would have received at the auction. Sometimes you're buying them at that plus whatever interest is accrued, because the county's taking the stance of, okay, well, no one else bought it. I bought that lien. If you're going to buy it from me, I'm going to charge you the face amount plus the accrued interest. And so it just depends on, in some states and counties, you can't do that at all. I mean, the laws actually require them to take it back to auction at least once or multiple times until they finally take ownership of the property, and then you could buy the deed. So like anything in this world, in the tax sale space, it varies so much from state to state. But just calling and talking to the county authority that you have interest in, is the best way to get answers to those.
And just know, in most cases, you're not going to be able to go that same day on the auction day and wait for the auction to end and go right into the county's treasurer's office and ask for that property that didn't sell. They're going to have to go through a process of assignment to the county. So it has to go through usually some official kind of documentation before you're going to have a chance to actually purchase that from the county. So it's not like you can sit there and just watch. I mean, you can, because then you'll know, but it's pretty rare that you'll be able to just march into the treasurer's office that day and put your money on the counter and buy it. So just keep that in mind.
Got you. Okay. All right. So that pretty much answers that question. And that was very clear. I get that, and hopefully the audience gets that. And if there's any questions on that, by all means, I'd like them to post some comments and questions, and I'll bring them back to Brian and Rachel for answers. See if we can dig into that a little more if you need be. But obviously, the thing that Rachel and Brian both said was every county is different, every state's different. So you want to contact them and find out, hey, what are your rules on over the county or struck off or assignments, right? And it should get you started in the process of understanding how to acquire those. So the number one question that I've gotten since we started posting this video series, and actually since I've started the Facebook group, was, where do I find a list? Now, I remember way back, okay, I'm going to date myself, back in 1999 and 2000 when I first started down this area, my go-to was the newspaper. If I wanted to deal with the county, I would contact them, find out what newspaper they were posting in, because they're required to post it, so many days before the auction, and then they got to do it again. My Achilles heel with that, my problem with that was 3 days before the auction, a lot of things change. People are trying to hurry up and pay before their property goes to auction. And so that Tuesday, there's no paper on Monday to tell you, okay, it's been cleaned up, here's what's left. So that Tuesday, you're going into an auction with 136 properties on your list, only to get there to find out there's 27 properties on the list. And so everything that you thought you were going to go bid on just got wiped out. And for me, that was first class ticket to Georgia, hotel room, rental car, and back. And then I go there and then like, oh my gosh, it's nothing that I wanted. It's on the list. So now I got to research properties that I don't want to make an investment, right? And then I talk myself out of that because that's not my strategy. And so now I just went on vacation for 3 days. And I could have stayed my butt at home. So this is the reality of investing that way. And I know technology has advanced, and I am still involved in the market. I'm just not as involved as I used to be. So I know there's other ways to do that. So how would I find a list if I was new to this, or even if I was experienced and I wanted to look at another state? How would I find these lists?
And you're focusing on its sale, right? Not OTC at this point, correct? Just to make sure that we're...
Well, we can talk about both, but let's talk about the sale first. Let's talk about.
Well, certainly there's still the newspapers, shockingly. That's still happening in some places. But for the most part anymore, if it's an online sale, you can go out to an online auction and they're going to have give you a capability of downloading a list of parcels.
Now, do you have to pay for that, Rachel, or is that free?
It just depends. In Illinois, every single list in Illinois requires a costly registration fee before you even can have access to the list of parcels. Iowa has a little bit of both. But in places like New Jersey or Florida liens, or even Florida deeds, you can go out to their auction site and just download. You have to register. Usually you have to go in, you have to make yourself a username. In some cases, you might have to put a little deposit down, but it's very small. But in most cases on those sites, as long as you're putting in your banking information so that you can basically, be charged if you do win or bid and win anything, then you can download a list at that time. So if I was just researching and said, okay, I'm into bid down states, I'm into liens in the bid down states, right? So that would immediately lead me to Florida.
But then there's 3 or 4 other states that are very similar. So if I wanted to do that, I would have to do that in all those states. Is that right? I would have to go through that process of getting, okay.
Not just state, but by jurisdiction. So because not every state's going to use one auction site. So, you know, the state of Florida alone for the lien sales has 5 different online auction sites they use. Now, one county uses one, most of them use 2 major ones, or 3 major ones. And then there's, you know, some sidebars. So you will never have success going into one online auction site and getting an entire state of the different tax sale lists. You have to hunt and peck for those.
Now, shameless plug right here. So I just want to ask this question. Are there providers out there that offers that type of data, one shot, one stop? I mean,
well,
listen,
I mean, yeah, we do.
Okay. I'm just curious because, you know, I have friends, you know, they drive all the fancy cars, they go shopping at the meat market, then they go over to, you know, Whole Foods to go get their vegetables, and then they drive out to the pasture to get their milk. No, I'm going to Walmart. I'm going to get everything I need, and my son needs a bicycle. I'm going to get it too, and I'm leaving, right? And some people go, Carl, you're so frugal. You're such a, you know, you hold on to all your money, you squeeze it. I'm like, no, it just makes logic to me. If I can go get the same quality in one place, why would I go? I mean, I'm just thinking about the headache that I went through when I was interested in Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, Atlanta, DeKalb County, Florida, Texas. Oh my gosh, the headaches that I went through to first acquire all that information. Forget researching it. Just let's not even talk about that. But just to pull all that information together would, oh my God, it amounts to an investment. Right?
Yeah. Well, so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so, you know, since that, I know there's been companies popping up that's saying, hey, I have a list, and hey, I have a list. And then you go into those lists and they're like, they're not full. They're no. So meeting both of you and knowing that you all the data people, I'm just curious if that's something that TSR as a company, I'm not sure what model, what product that would be under, but is there something that if I wanted to go to and go, oh, I want to look in Nevada, you know, I may have to pay for it, but that's okay, right? If it's $25 to get that, okay, great, I'll take it. Otherwise, it's going to take me 4 hours to do that, right? And to me, that's just mathematically, that just makes sense. I could do Nevada, I can do Georgia, I can do Arizona, I can do, you know, where it's available. If it's not available, then it's not available. But where it is, it just makes sense to me to have that opportunity. So I'm just curious if that is, I'm asking for a lot of features here while I'm saying that. I'm kind of being George Jetson. So I'm just curious if you all have all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, so there are places that, you know, we're not the only people that go out and find lists. I think the difference in our mind, at least, is that we will go out and do the work to get lists from jurisdictions, whether it's an online sale or an ugly newspaper, or, you know, a newspaper that they have to physically send to you. That happens. Or, you know, I can think of you know, counties where they have posted on their website, and I can pull one down and show you even right now if you want. Like, there's all of that we put into one area. So we go out and do all that work for you, because they do come in a variety of formats. And that's the thing that we recognized at the very beginning of starting this, is that that's great. Yeah, you can go out and do it. And I mean, if you want me to, Carl, I can even, show you one and give you an example.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
So really quick, if we go in, I'm just thinking about Georgia's kind of the next, I got to share my screen, right? Give me a minute here. Share screen. All right, so can you see my Google there?
We can see your Google.
All right, so Georgia's kind of the next state. This, you know, Georgia's had its own mess this spring with COVID cancellations, but let's just look at Chatham, Georgia, really quick. You know, they've got a nice website. Not everybody has a website, which is unfortunate, but they put their tax sale list right here. You can go out and do this, and you can download it and get it. Unfortunately, Chatham has what we consider an ugly list, because it's basically a newspaper. You can see that they're striking it off and updating this, but this is what they give you. And we
wow.
we call this a blob list. It's basically a newspaper listing that they've put on their website. You're talking about in needing to track, oh, which ones cancel. I mean, this is how one county does it.
Wow, they literally mark through it.
Yeah.
And can you pause for just a moment as you're flying through those? I'm just looking at, it has a map parcel number, has a defendant, against the property, and then it says the lot, the book. It does have a street. In the name of CGG Leasing. Okay, so you really don't know what's going on. Obviously, somebody owned it. You don't know if that's a previous tax. If they bought that lien previously and the redemption period has gone by and they haven't paid the taxes on it again, like, there's not much data there. There's just enough to give you an address and go to Zillow or Google and pull up the property, right? I mean, and the parcel ID, I guess I could take that and go into the commissioners if they have a tax. Okay, I see where I would have to go. But yeah, this is a list. This is a lot of work still behind this list, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a lot of jumping around still. Okay.
It is. And so, I mean, this is the nice part, I guess, to show you is that, you can go out and many times, counties will post their list on their county tax collecting site. In this case, it's the tax commissioner. In some, Georgia, it's also the sheriff will have the site, so you can go out to the sheriff site and collect, a list there. You just have to do it county by county, and you have to figure out what each county is doing and how to get that list. But we literally in South Carolina, for example, have physical newspapers that we have to request, purchase, and then we have to do our own manipulation of that data. But that's the list we get, is a physical newspaper list. So.
Got you. So, wow, interesting. Very, very interesting there. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's awesome information there. Awesome.
Exactly.
Great. I just try to, as we all know, the reason we joined on into this call and to share the insight was to basically bring it back to the basics and guide people through the processes that they need to understand in order to be successful at what they're doing. Now, we can't control their success. We're not providing strategies. Everybody's strategy is different based on your adverse to risk, your ability. How much can you afford to put out there? What you can afford to invest in. I mean, so it applies to anyone on a different level. But basically, the videos that has been compiled so far, if I go back and watch day one with both of you all the way till today, I've basically learned everything that took me months to learn. Literally, took me months to learn. I was reading books, talking to attorneys, because I didn't know anything about the anti-law trust, all that stuff. I'm like, law trust what? No, I'm going to a bid. They're going to bid. It's a bid, whatever, right? And I'm at the auction talking to people like, hey, what are you bidding on? Oh, that property sucks. What are you bidding on? Oh, blah, blah, blah. I don't like that property. And so now I realize, wait, you can't do that, and it took me a long time to figure that out. So I'm so grateful, and I hope everyone appreciates the information that you're bringing, because this is Investing 101. This is really it in a nutshell. If they get this information and apply it, it will help them to make intelligent decisions on their investments and know how to go through the process.
Glad we could be helpful.
So let me see if there's any other questions I may have missed from our team. Let's see. There's a question. There was a statement made by another organization that says tax liens are not everlasting instruments. Does anyone have a clue what that means? What do they mean by everlasting instrument? Brian?
Well, I hope I'm going down the right track here, but they don't last forever, right? So there is typically an expiration period, and it does vary by state, and some of them go a long time, but in general, there is an expiration date on your liens. And so there's multiple dates you want to track, and usually the two most important ones are the first eligible for foreclosure date. It's usually the redemption period, and then there's an expiration date. And sometimes they're the same. Or sometimes you can foreclose. I'll just use Florida example as a lien. You can foreclose or not even foreclose, you're going to file for a tax deed at 22 months. And so typically in April every year, the liens that were sold and still haven't redeemed from 2 years prior in June, sales are typically May, June, you can now start to file for tax deeds. And there's lots of advantages to doing that. Biggest one being if you bid below 18%, all of a sudden you start compiling 18% for as long as it's in that stage. But if you choose not to, you don't have to at that 22-month point. You can continue to hold on to it, and you have 7 years in Florida. But after that 7 years goes by, that piece of paper becomes worthless. There's really nothing you can do with that lien after 7 years in Florida. And so that's I'm assuming that's what they're alluding to in that question. But there's some myths out there. As you buy this lien, you hold it forever, you can earn your interest. You never have to foreclose. You just hold that piece of paper, and that's not accurate. You do have to do something at some point in time. Otherwise, you will lose everything you've put into it up to that point.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that answered the question, and I believe that's what they were alluding to in that particular question. So to kind of bring everything back around full circle, so we talked about the laws, the antitrust laws in regards to how to bid, making sure that they understand the rules and the regulations at the county level and on a federal level, that what you can and cannot do. And again, you don't need an attorney to do that. Turning this whole thing around is the OTC, and understanding that that's over the counter, something that's been struck off, didn't get sold at the auction. And so there's an opportunity to invest in those. Obviously, there's a reason they didn't go at auction. And there could be a million reasons. They could have not showed up. They could have had bad information. Many things could have happened. You can find a diamond in the rough, maybe, possibly. But if you're interested in that type of information, or interested in those type of OTCs, Rachel, is there a list for that that's different than lien list? Like, do I need to go find an OTC list? And
yeah,
are there OTC lists?
Yeah, it's basically the same as a sale list, and that's our terminology. So sale list is attached to an actual sale date. Those are the parcels that have been advertised to go to sale. And then there is an OTC, struck off. I mean, you have a lot of different terminology here, but overall we use the OTC definition. And same thing, you can go out and look on county sites or state sites if they're state held, and find those raw lists basically in the same format. So
okay.